Some people, when they have tremendous injury, they just decide, you know what, that's it. And then there are people who decide, my body can heal and I can get over this because there is something else to achieve.
I'm not sure if I really believed that I would play NHL. I was just more about trying to fight through all the adversity, try to prove a lot of people wrong. My heart is in Boston. Ending like that, it's not exactly the way I kind of imagine it.
Zdeno Chara is signing with the Capitals because the Bruins are moving on from him.
When other people think that he just reached the top, he will go through pain just to find another mountain.
All right, we now welcome on two awesome guests coming from Shadow Lion. It's a media company here, Gilad and Dan. They're directing the Z Here for This series. Is now streaming on Peacock. They put a couple on NBCSN, but gentlemen, what's going on?
All good, man. Just you got Z made for this.
Made for this. There it is. Made for this.
All good.
Hot start here, boys.
And then the one, yeah, hot start. Well, the article DJ sent me said Chara made for this, and he's like, that's wrong too. I was like, good grief, we might as well keep it going wrong here. But what's going on, guys? Thanks for popping on.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be here.
So we'll kind of start with this. I mean, how did it all? I kind of got the backstory of how it got underway, but how did you guys get matched up with Chara here, and how did you get the idea to get this thing started and off and running?
Yeah, so we met Z in the late winter of 2019. You know, we do social media branded and original content. We partner in our company founding is Tom Brady. And so we were making a playoff hype video for him for that playoff run that they ultimately ended up beating the Rams in the Super Bowl. And we wanted to kind of do these different themes throughout each episode or through each, week. And so we ended up doing, one where we kind of had the Mount Rushmore of Boston sports figures, recite a voiceover we wrote. And it was David Ortiz, Paul Pierce, Tom, and Zdeno Chara. And so we met Z filming that, and we did it at the Warrior Ice Arena. I think it was like after practice or before practice. And, Z was, I think, like 2 minutes late to recording, which, is not late in, athlete time or anyone's time really. And so we, but he was so apologetic and just genuine and excited to be a part of it. And, as many takes as we needed. And, it was just so awesome working with him. And he just seemed like such a good dude. And we ended up just kind of, talking with him. And we would, the month or two after that, just kind of like, hey, we should dive deeper here. Maybe there's something we can do. We helped him out with a couple of social media posts going into the playoffs. And then ultimately decided, we should be capturing this postseason run. And Z agreed. And so that's just kind of how we, he was excited to capture that process. And that was just kind of how we got started.
Yeah, and this is ultimately the run that goes when they go to the Cup final versus St. Louis. He breaks the jaw, all that good stuff. So you guys get all of that. So we'll start there. I mean, what was in terms of like filming with the injury and all that, and how involved were you guys in knowing how badly he was injured, obviously. And in the NHL, it's an upper body injury. You could have a broken face or just calling it upper body. So how in tune were you guys with that and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, you have it, like you said it exactly right. It's, going into this, there was like a few like cuts. He had stitches here and there. And, I'd ask him about it. Like, is this something that affects you at all? Does it bother you? And yeah, just, hockey players are hockey players. It's like there and gone. So when this happened, it was definitely a kind of, holy shit moment. Like this could be, he's, no way he's coming back to play. Like we see him get carted off the ice, everyone in Boston's wondering like, why is he on the bench? But I mean, you could see it in the documentary in the first episode. You know, we got to film him in the hospital the next day when they flew back to Boston. And I was just blown away at how just like, you know, he couldn't talk. His jaw was wired shut. And, you know, even through that, he was just like, yeah, you know, just hope I could play tomorrow. You know, like I want to be out there. And that was a moment where, yeah, all those other stitches, you know, and you always hear stories of guys with, you know, broken like feet, toes, fingers, like ribs, whatever. You know, all of that just got, you know, fully put into perspective of how badly he wanted it and how badly these guys want it and what they're willing to do to what they're willing to go through.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was I mean, you know, he couldn't even eat solid food at that point. Like it was truly a like just kind of had to pinch myself moment to think like, wow, it's like superhuman.
This was me. I would have been out for years.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
Like, no chance.
that
Oh,
was like
exactly.
that was like the most
Yeah.
electric part of that playoff run too. Like, as he came back the next game and he was in the starting lineup, and then I think when they announced his name, like the crowd just erupted. They were like, "Holy shit, how's this guy playing right now?"
Yeah.
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 We did an interview too with Don Del Negro, who's I think the Bruins
Yeah.
head athletic trainer for like 30 years or something, and he spoke about that day and when Z went back into the locker room, you know, he was like just like I'm going to go back out there and play. And I think he used the word like intervention or something, where he was just like they needed to tell him like, no, you can't go out there and play, and they just gave him a, you know, there were tooth fragments that were stuck in his mouth or his throat, and they normally try and like pull those out, and Z was like, give me a bottle of water, and he just drank them. And you know, I think Don has always talked, I think also said something like Z always refused stitches, or if he did do stitches, he would just do it on spot, no you know, and pain relief or anything like that. You know, I think he's just that ultimate warrior, and you know, totally just portrays what hockey is.
Love
Yeah.
it. So, Dan, you kind of mentioned having like an oh shit moment when he was injured. So, I mean, that happens. I'm curious how many times throughout the filming of the entire time you had that moment of like, well, we don't know what's going on next. Cause like you said, there's the injury. I mean, if he doesn't play, then it's like, you're not going to film him sitting in the press box, you know, watching the playoffs. And then this offseason, we'll get into it a little bit too, is when he comes to the Caps, like it was either the Caps or retirement, and it was pretty close to retirement. So it's like, you guys are probably thinking there, like, was there any point of just like, if he retires, then we're kind of toasted here.
Definitely. But I think that was also kind of the journey the entire way. You know, we started at the beginning of the season, the Bruins, you know, they had a great year, but, you know, you never know what's going to happen in the playoffs. So
Yeah.
even starting, you know, they go to game 7 against Toronto, and like that was electric. So like, okay, this is exciting. You know, we got something at least, but none of us expected it to go to game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah.
The jaw, you know, COVID, all this you can't predict it, you know? So I think that's sort of the kind of magic of documentary filmmaking,
Yeah.
is just having a camera there and not knowing what's going to happen. But with a subject like Z, you know, I think people could see in it just how really how nothing's going to stop him. You know, I think that's also a tribute to just these athletes of how they're able to bounce back from some of these, you know, adversities. And I think Z is just a perfect portrayal of that, you know?
Yeah, he's like the ultimate, like we've used the word warrior like multiple times in this interview already. And I think like literally every player in the NHL is like, I want, like, they somehow try to model their health and their fitness based off the way Z has done it like all these years. It's kind of crazy just to think about, like, all the NHL is like kind of looking up to him.
Yeah. I mean, 44 years old, still playing, like, you know, obviously have to, that was also great. Just learning about where he came from and what he went through just to even get to the NHL.
Yeah.
I think it's just incredible to see him still going at it. And yeah, it's just a true testament to that just drive, you know?
Yeah. So did you guys like travel overseas for this documentary at all? Did you like go to his hometown or anything like that, or?
Yeah, we went to Slovakia, Trenčín, Slovakia, which was his hometown right after that or that summer after that Stanley Cup Finals run. And building on what Dan said, I think there's so many cool moments there. First of all, just seeing like what he means to the community, and how many 33 shirts and jerseys and hats and Bruin signs there are, you know, thousands of miles away from Boston. is a testament to, what he means to that community. But there was, we went back to this gym that Z works out at like every single summer. It's the same gym that his dad used to wrestle in. And I mean, you walk into this place and you can see it in the docu-series, but it just kind of looks like, an old high school gymnasium and stuff. And Z's just using, probably the same barbells that his dad was using 50 years ago. And it's just, gritty and grungy, and Z feels like he's at home, right? It's just like so natural for him. And he's, we walk in and there's a high school or, wrestling practice going on. And we just kind of wait there on the side until they finish up. They say hi to Z, and then he can kind of go in and do his thing. And it was just like, this guy's a future Hall of Famer, iconic, athlete. And he's just kind of patiently waiting to use this high school gym that he's been doing for the last 20 plus years. But it worked, can't argue about that. But that was super cool.
Yeah. Just, it was like this old, speaker system, probably from like 1995, probably hasn't changed since. And he just like plugs in, throws on a CD, I'm pretty sure, and just like had a workout CD of like Metallica and other, like it was just, it was such a trip seeing him.
He goes there late night to wrestle bears in the off season.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned that was a pretty good time. I mean, what other kind of interesting stories came out of it, maybe with Z or following him or anything like that, that kind of really stuck out to you guys throughout the entire filming of it?
Yeah, definitely that Slovakia trip was very memorable. I mean, I don't think there's many other reasons people would travel to Trenčín, Slovakia.
Yeah.
But the opportunity to meet his parents, his dad, I think Gilad could attest to it too, is the firmest handshake I've ever received in my life,
Almost took your arm off pretty much.
Yeah. He was just, as much as we were there to, film him and be fly on the wall and not interrupt his summer and his regimen, he was so keen on, showing us around. He's a plant-based, he has a plant-based diet, but he was taking us to like, oh, you got to try this burger. My friend makes it. It's so good. And he was going out of his way to make sure we were still able to, have a good time, and he's getting prepared for the season, that was a really memorable trip. We were there for 4 days, I think, in total, but yeah, it was really great.
You kind of talk about that off season too. I mean, it was kind of an interesting off season. Like we talked about I kind of asked it earlier too, how in tune were you guys with his decision-making process? Was there like an actual contemplation of retirement? Like, were you guys aware, like if teams were contacting him, like, were you aware like, oh, the Caps just hit him up, maybe he'll go there? I don't know how much you guys knew or didn't know, but how was that process like?
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty much, the duration, like the 4th episode really covers, I think, that whole thought process and transition to, okay, season's over, contract's up. I don't know what's going to happen. And, we would ask him, and I think generally he, really wasn't sure himself what was going to happen up until, months and months after the season had ended. So I think he was also partially a little bit, didn't want to start getting in, I think he was keeping it very close chest up until the Bruins let him know that he wasn't going to, they weren't going to offer him the contract that he wanted. So he had mentioned, there are some teams, but it wasn't until, the day that he was going to sign with the Capitals that we found out. And, we knew, I think, that he wanted to go to a competitive team, and, Caps, obviously they have that better lineup. Like, it didn't work out the way I think we had hoped, but
we haven't been competitive in years, but
well, either way, I think
there though. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we had all expected him to come back to Boston. I don't really think at any point we had thought that he was going to leave. We, even friends would ask, what do you think he's going to do this off season? And I don't think any of us saw it coming. So it was definitely a surprise.
And just on the retirement side of things, I think that the fourth episode, there's this awesome scene where Dan was with Z, I think, for Christmas this past year in Sarasota in Florida. Z was with his whole family, and this was kind of right around that time period where he ended up announcing he was going to Washington, and he talked about how he'd wake up one morning and decided he was going to retire, and then by that afternoon he was I still have no, I still want to go play, and just kind of talking to his family and his daughter about what she wants him to do, and kind of like really like these external factors that all play a huge role, especially when you're 43, 44, and you have a lot to consider. And I think ultimately Z just felt like there was still gas in the tank, and as long as he could play for that competitive team, why would he hang him up now?
Yeah, and I think, well, based off what I like read, but did anything have to do with it being with Ovechkin? Because we heard earlier in his career, when he was trying to decide on his first contract when he first signed with Boston, or however that went down, like he apparently him and Ovechkin had talks, and Washington was the second team to go to in that first contract. But does he mention any of that like in the docu-series at all, or to you guys at all?
No, not specifically. I think obviously both of them have been in the league for so long, they obviously know each other. So I think he knew what he was getting into. And, he had mentioned like coming even as, the 14-year captain of the Bruins that, I'm just another player on this team. I'm not trying to interrupt. I think he wanted to just, yeah, I don't think it was specifically a relationship, or it could have been, I guess, now that you mention it.
Yeah.
But I think he was more just looking for a team that, he really thought had a chance to get a cup. And so I think that's why he ended up with Washington.
Yeah, when he first came here, AB, we talked like, does he play more than 20 games this year for this team, or is he going to average more than like 10 minutes of ice time? And he was averaging 20 minutes a night there.
Yeah, exactly. Like I remember asking that. The over/under was like 10 games that we said, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We just, based off the way Boston was talking about using him, I kind of thought Washington might be doing the same. I didn't know if Washington was going to do the same thing. So we just didn't know what to expect. And then like first 5 games, he's playing 20 minutes a night. We're like, oh yeah, he's probably going to be in every single game this year.
I think that's one of the coolest parts of what we get to do as far as like getting to know these guys is when you get to see them like work day in and day out, and you get to see them like push it every single day to as far as they possibly can. There's really no reason why you would think they can't do it, that they can't play the whole season, that they can't be out there for their regular time. I think that's something we've consistently felt with Z throughout this whole process, and why we never really thought he was going to retire, because the guy just loves the game so much, and he's willing to like put his entire body, everything into the sport. And I know that's one of my favorite parts of kind of being able to do these follow documentaries is it's just inspiring as hell. Like if he's going to do that at 43, 44 and defy these kinds of expectations and people who are telling him what he can or cannot do, why can't you do that in your own life? And I think that was something that we always wanted to have shine through the doc.
Love it. You guys got a favorite episode in there? Is there one that sticks out to you? I know you obviously got to love them all. You made them all, but there's got to be one that's got to be your favorite.
I think the second one's pretty special. Well, yeah, it's tough to say. They all have, their own merits. The second one's definitely a little special, I think, because you really get to see him with his family. I think the first episode, it's like you can't write that with the jaw fracture and the Stanley Cup Finals. But I think really the second episode is where you get to see Z as a person, and fans typically don't get to see players like that. They just know him as the athlete or the guy they see.
Especially these European players where they don't open up much because a lot of them speak the broken English. Obviously, he's been here for feels like 30 years in the States here, but you don't see a lot of this with these European NHL guys where they're willing to open up like that.
Yeah. It just shows you how like real he is as, a dad and, a husband. And, his wife was, one of the sweetest people we met in her interview. I think we kept using throughout the entire series because it was like, she just knows him better than anyone. So it really helped us really helped us tell the story of who Z is.
Did you guys have any like? I'm assuming you did, but did you have conversations with like other players on like his Bruins teams or anything like that? And like, if so, like who kind of reached out to you guys or was like kind of just was like friendly with you guys around?
Yeah. I mean, the Bruins organization in general were super supportive, as were the Caps, as was the NHL. I mean, big shout out to all three of them because, I think navigating the world, sometimes there's so many players trying to do so many things that I think everyone had, such respect for Z that they were all willing to support the project. So definitely shout out to those, those groups. But I think, we reached out to them, just letting them know, we wanted to do some of these interviews, and they gave us an incredible lineup. I mean, we had, we have Bergeron in there, McAvoy, Pasta, Tuca, Marchand, Krejci. Am I missing anyone, Dan?
I think that was it.
I mean, so,
Torrey Krug.
All the tenured guys there, yeah.
So, all these people who really knew Z, were impact players on the team, and could really speak to not only what he's able to do as like a player, but what he was as a leader, captain, teammate. So they all had nothing but great things to say. And I think when we did the interview with them, it was right after Z played his 1500th game.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of them just talked about like the sheer volume of getting to 1500 games is just ridiculous. And that coming from, these hockey guys, some of them who have 1,000 in their own right. Talking about that was put some stuff into perspective for us to hear them kind of, in awe of that number.
Yeah. And the fourth episode as well, we kind of expanded outside of the Bruins. We interviewed Jerome McGinley, Nick Lidstrom, who was like I think that was Z's idol as he was just getting into the league. Mark Recchi. And so those guys also, plus 1,500 game players, like legends in their own right. Really, really cool to get to talk to them and like hear what they think about, just share their thoughts on Z. And with the Caps too, they had actually recommended we interview Nick Jensen, his line mate, and just the progress he's made in his game playing with Z. So it just shows the impact that he has, not only as a player, but just like on the team as well, able to like take younger guys under his wing. I mean, you look at McAvoy on the Bruins, like he's the perfect mentor for any young guy.
Yep. Was there a big difference between like the two locker rooms? Like, did you notice anything specific between like the Bruins locker room and Caps locker room, or like attitude wise, or like how just the atmosphere of it? I mean,
yeah, I think Z talks about this in the fourth episode about when he going into the kind of first games with Washington, he was nervous about the like pregame celebrations that, or whatever you want to call them, that the team, everyone's doing. And he was just kind of like, am I going to fit in here? What am I going to do? Is this going to work? And I think you ended up seeing where's Z, where, that would happen before every game. And I think obviously ended up working out. And I think he talks about it and just embracing it and how it made it more fun for him. And, but that story definitely comes to mind.
Yeah.
Love it. And then kind of last one I got here is, I don't know how much you guys were able to follow up Bruins players throughout this season, but kind of like you mentioned, the Bergerons and the Marchands who played 14, 16 seasons with him, and what it's now like to play against him 8 times a year. And just how the mentality of doing that, going up against him, this, that, and the other. Because a couple of games, it got a little chippy between him and Marchand, stuff like that. But obviously there's all respect on the ice, but curious as to how that goes.
Yeah, we haven't really followed up with them since. Maybe it would have been different had the series gone the other way. But I think, the way Z puts it is like, once the game starts, like it's on, it's you're not going to hold back because you're doing your team a disservice. Like you got to give it 100% every time you're out there. So, I think some interviews, and you can see in like the handshake lineup at the end of the game, there's obviously a lot of respect. But between whistles, I think it's like, let
it go.
All fired or what? Firing on all cylinders.
There it is. We'll love it. Dan and Gilad, appreciate you guys. The directors of Z made for this and now streaming on Peacock, correct?
Yep.
There it is, out on Peacock. Anything else you guys want to say about it before we let you go? Like we said, thanks for the time and looking forward to firing it up here this week.
Likewise, appreciate you guys having us on. Excited for people to check this out. Z's the man.
See you, man.
We'll see what happens next year. I guess that's the next.
I guess to see if he's coming back or what the deal is here. But I'd like to have him back. AB, give me one more year with him. Give me one more year with Big Z.
Yeah, definitely. He was clutch to have, a lot of moments this season.